I'm a carpenter. Been that way most of my adult life. Actually, in high school, I started working in a cabinet shop. And if you take a piece of wood that has a hole in it, and there's a drill and a drill bit sitting next to it, and you wonder if one thing has to do with the other, it's like what I'm about to tell you about the Bible. I discovered something that 2 Peter 3 talks about the creation account, the days of Noah, the flood, has references to God. A day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day to God. And that's what this Bible map is about. It basically talks about each day of creation having to do with 1,000 years. So if you go back to Genesis and rewrite out this 7-day plan, it's like sending a light through a film and projecting it from the projection room onto a screen, so that each day was a literal day of creation, and each of those days represents God forecasting 1,000 years. So if you put it all together in a big picture sense, God's basically saying, look, I'm going to give man 6 of these days, because man was created on the 6th day. And this is going to be your childhood, this is going to be your growing up. And the 7th day is going to be mine. I'm going to show you who I am, because there's not going to be any guessing involved. I'm going to return and reign for 1,000 years, and I'm going to rule and reign in love. I'm not going to force anything on you, just like I haven't forced anything on you up to this point. But I'm going to win your hearts over. And how I'm going to do that is how I'm going to be like I've been all along, love. But in this case, you're going to see it for real after you've had some experience, after you've had contrast. And that's what that little square is about, is understanding that contrast is a blessing. Adam and Eve and Satan, or Lucifer actually, didn't have contrast, and because they didn't have contrast, they didn't have the wisdom to, well, I guess basically shun away sin, pride, accepting the lie that we lack anything, and we don't lack anything. So this 6,000 year plan, each day actually does coincide with something along the lines in those 1,000 years, and things like a new creation being created on the 5th set of 1,000 years. Well, Messiah came to us in the 4th set of 1,000 years toward the end of it, and it switched over to the 5th set of 1,000 years around his death. So as a result of his death on the cross, we were made a new creation. And if you look in the 5th day of Genesis creation account, you'll see that new creatures were made. So things along those lines coincide. And then there's also this reference to Noah in 2 Peter 3 and the flood. And he's talking to Noah, and he says, my spirit won't strive with man forever. So, you know, basically, in other words, because we have free will and we have the ability to see things the way we want to, we're not going to get it all right. We're going to get some things wrong. God will turn that around and use the wisdom that we've taken from that, learning who we're not, and it'll help point us to who we are. But he tells Noah, I'm going to limit man's days to 120 years. Well, when Messiah returns, it is said to be on a Jubilee year. And that's pretty interesting. First of all, when he returns, it may be the spirit of Messiah that returns as much as a physical returning. But if we don't accept him, just like we didn't, he came to his own and his own rejected him. If we do the same thing today as what happened when he came and dwelt among us in the flesh, and for the purpose of ending at the cross, and then coming back to life to show that you can't kill love. and that he would stop at nothing to prove his love for us. If we reject him because of this whole love thing as being seen as weak and not as right as the law, then we're going to miss what we were supposed to get. So, with all that said, Jubilee years are 50 years apart. Every 50 years, the idea was that everything returns to the owner. And who owns the earth? Well, who made it? The Creator, which is Yod-He Vav-He, or Yahweh, is the Jesus Christ created everything. If you read in 1 John and John, you'll see that everything was made by Messiah that was made, and nothing that wasn't made by Messiah. So he's going to return on a Jubilee year. Well, we've lost track of what years are Jubilee years, except that there are markers. In 1967, Jerusalem was taken back by the Israelites, and it marked a Jubilee year. And if you add 50 years to 1967, you come out 2017. Lo and behold, if you take what President Trump did in supporting the Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, that's another marker. And granted, to somebody that doesn't follow it, that might seem like somewhat of a weak marker, but it's not, because everything starts with the idea. Everything starts with the authority. Everything starts with, it starts with something that starts it. And if you read Ezekiel 37, as well as Isaiah 61 and Isaiah 49, those three chapters really talk about bringing the children of Israel, which represent believers in the world, back to Messiah, back to being together. It talks about taking the stick of Ephraim and putting it together with the stick of Judah, or Judah. Well, if you put these two sticks together, Ephraim would represent the United States in modern day history, and Judah is represented by Israel. And it talks about putting flesh back on these dry bones. Well, the dry bones represent not seeing God as a loving God, because the bones are our hard structure. The soft tissue that goes on that hard structure is love, representing love. And he's rebuilding us with the idea that we see God as love. And he's doing that right now. At the same time, we can look at this whole Jubilee year thing, coming back in the year 2017 in spirit, teaching us and bringing us together, reconciling back to him. That's him claiming all these things back together to him. And where this whole 120 years comes into play is what is 120 times 50, which is the Jubilee year. That equals 6,000. So at the end of the 6th day, equal to 1,000-year days, 6,000 years, we're there. We're very close. We can't pinpoint it, but we can use the marker of Jerusalem going back to the Israelites in 1967. So it's not concrete. I realize that there's some educated guess, because if you understand biblical history, if you understand the shadows and symbology of the Bible, then it's not just a complete guess. There is some education involved there. So this is just my call it a biblical guess, but based on some wisdom, not just flight. And I believe that we've started something, that Messiah is going to return soon, but that's not. I know it seems like everybody's been saying that for a long time, thousands of years. They started saying it 2,000 years ago, but the thing is, when God's timing is right, we're allowed to understand something. And until that timing is right, we won't get it. There's small hints, like Deuteronomy 31:2. It refers back to Moses, and they're about to cross the Jordan, and he's saying, I'm not going to cross the Jordan and go into the promised land. I'm 120 years old. Well, he represents the law. So 120 years, in coincidence with this limiting man's days to 120 years, there's a second witness there. Take it for what you will. It's fun. It's a mystery, and I like it. So sharing it with you has just been more of my goofing around, more of my passion for the Bible. Hope you have fun with it, and see if you can't come up with some ideas of your own.